10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey, friends and everyone out there in the chat. Thanks for coming to another live stream from Skeptic Spin. I'm your host tonight and always, Justin, Hooligan. Tonight, my panel primers, the two people to start us off here. We got Trevor from the Believe It or Not channel. Hey, Trevor, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, when you're around, man, everything's a little bit better.
Nice.
And Daedalus Media from Two Guys Talking History. Thanks so much for joining us today. What have you been up to?
Thank you much for having us this week. Mostly, I just been working on Israel-Palestine research, so that's a happy topic.
Yeah.
But Titan told me you're having a panel about America and Canada, and I'm like, oh, Donald Trump saying stupid things. I've got to get in.
Yeah, I'm super happy to meet you and have you over here. Our chat is already here and on time because they know that when I go live, I don't usually spend too much time being live, but we got Pragmatic Crystal, we got Al Trucker out there already. Assalon's out there. Hey, nice to see you. Raven, Darkstar, How to Rule an Asteroid. And those are all the names so far in the chat. Oh, we got Titan Uranus in there already as well. And anyone else who hasn't been in the chat yet, thank you so much for coming out. Now, I'll just put this little thing out there because it's exciting for me. I'm 10 subscribers from 500. So if all goes well, we'll hit that tonight, and that'll be really cool. I don't have the view counts to get the monetization and all that stuff done just yet, but it's baby steps, right? Yeah. So before we get into the meat and potatoes, let's talk about you two real quick. So, Trevor, over at Believe It or Not, you just finished a huge series over there.
Yeah, I just finished my 10 Commandments series. That was a long and windy road. I don't know. It was a long road, but I got through it.
I mean, I guess on the creative side of it, it's probably a lot of stress and pressure writing and editing all of that content.
Yeah.
But as a viewer, I got to tell you, man, however much work you feel like you put into that, it's so worth it because it's very entertaining.
Thank you.
Usually when I see something new from your channel, I drop everything and put it on right away because I can't seem to be the first one to comment. I can never get that accolade. But
well, why don't I'll message you as soon as I'm about to hit publish so that you can jump over there and be first.
And Daedalus Media, Two Guys Talking History. So what have you guys been up to over there?
So we're both individually working on research projects. My co-host is he's a historian of Ukraine. He studied Ukrainian studies and went on to, before the war broke out in earnest, he was going into Ukraine and doing research on the Holocaust using one of the SBU archives. So what he's been doing is that archive has long since been destroyed, but he's been taking what documents he's collected from himself and other scholars and trying to put them back together. I've been working on a discussion of the Camp David Accords in 2000s with Bill Clinton, Yasser Arafat, Rabin. So I'm about 40 or 50 sources into that during that research project, which has taken the better part of a year. But that's what I've been up to. Eventually it'll get finished, I promise.
Awesome. How familiar are you with between Canadian and American history?
So my specialty was American military history.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a long shared history in that regard. We invaded you in the Revolutionary War. It was unsuccessful. We tried again in the War of 1812. It was also unsuccessful.
Yeah, we burned down your White House.
Yes. We still have soot stains.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time talking with Canadian creators, actually, almost exclusively. So President Sunday, for example, a couple others. So
yeah, I love President Sunday. President Sunday has been a great supporter of me pretty much since day one at this point. In fact, I could pretty much credit like most of my subscribers at this point between Trevor and President Sunday. So Yeah, President Sunday is awesome. He didn't make it the last time I did a panel, but then he raided me, and it was like 100 and something people in my chat, which was like crazy. Anyways, for all of you who are here tonight in the chat, I see we got some more faces here. Super happy to see you guys. Pinned at the top is the link to this StreamYard. So for the first time, I am opening up the panel to anyone else who would like to come on in and share some thoughts on it. And what are we sharing thoughts on? Well, turns out that President Trump doesn't really have a whole lot of respect for the people that we've shared an alliance with for a very, very long time. So here, I've got the entire story, as it were, laid out for us to check out. So let's look at the players and the timeline of events and how this took place. And very simply, the first thing to happen was our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, went and visited Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago to have a little tete-a-tete, as we would call it up here. You got anything to add or say about this? I'm curious about the American perspective, Daedalus.
So I would note that he was making that visit to Mar-a-Lago because our president can't visit your country because he's a convicted felon.
Correct.
So,
Yeah. Well, on the Canadian side, Trevor, do you know what the Canadian political view was of Trudeau going over to visit Trump?
Well, it's definitely split. There's a lot of Trudeau hate in Canada right now. And there's a lot of people who just love Trump. I don't think it's a majority by any means, but it's a big there's a big population. So there were a lot of people who were like, oh, Trudeau's just embarrassing us. But there were other people who were like, no, somebody's got to talk to Trump and explain how this affects other people. So.
Yeah. Well, just real quick, I'll welcome Jester to the stage. Thanks for joining us there, Jester.
Hello.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So for anyone who didn't know, when our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, so first of all, it's important for everyone to understand a Prime Minister does not equal a president. Okay. Our Prime Minister is simply a representative of our population and of our government and our country, where the president, they've got powers and they can do stuff. Our guy can't really do a whole lot of anything without permission and votes and all that stuff. Okay. But he wants to go have a chat with Donald Trump about the tariffs. We all have heard about these terrible tariffs that Donald Trump wants to put on every country. The opposition from Trudeau did a lot of hate on him going to Mar-a-Lago, as it was a weak maneuver, that he was going there to kiss the ring and, basically kiss some ass, right? And the Canadians here, I guess, were a little bit kind of like, that wasn't a good idea because now we look weak. But with that, everything seemed fine. Everything was cool. But then Trump, as we all know, Trump loves to tweet, or rather truth, or whatever you want to call it, that the meeting was a good meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada. They discussed a lot of stuff. What did you think, Jester, since you just joined us here on the stage? What did you think of everything up to this point in the timeline?
I'll be honest, I don't know much about it. I was hoping to learn a little more, but
All right.
if Canada wants to annex us and just extend that healthcare, that single payer healthcare, I pledge my support to the cause.
Okay. That's funny. That's so funny because one of the jokes that I was in researching stuff for this episode, one of the jokes that I saw was, how funny is it that so many Americans decide to move to Canada because Trump got elected, and then Trump's just like, yeah, well, Canada's just America now. Recapture all of those Americans. Anyways, this particular truth or tweet, whatever you want to call it, not so damning, not that big a deal. Okay. However, this next one's a video, so I'm going to play this. Trudeau goes on to a show in Nova Scotia. So if you don't know, that's the flag of Nova Scotia. And he had some words to share about tariffs and Trump.
President-elect Trump got elected on a committee.
Oh, of course, it's going to do this now.
Commitment to make life better and more affordable for Americans.
1 sec. Buffering. It always buffers when I'm live, but when I'm testing, it works fine.
And I think people south of the border are beginning to wake up to the reality that tariffs.
All right. Well, that's more or less the end of that. I know it didn't really say much, but basically Trudeau is saying that everyone's starting to realize that tariffs are not good, right? That all they do is trigger retaliatory tariffs. Daedalus, your face went sideways. I think you want to add on to that.
Yeah, it was a really, really interesting time, and almost immediately after the election, as a lot of people started looking up what tariffs are.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and
So
like
why don't you
know,
tell us what tariffs are?
tariffs are an economic they're an economic tax on imported goods. So if you want to import goods from another country, you end up paying a tariff on top of that. They're used in what's called protectionism, which was designed originally to kind of protect your own industrial base in manufacturing. In the age of global trade, they're not common anymore. So really, like outside of like negotiated trade deals, you don't really see that. The imposition of a tariff on somebody, which Trump did in his first term, to some countries, the imposition of a tariff is generally seen as a hostile act and will in turn bring tariffs, have the other country put tariffs back onto you. So the real kicker is too that a lot of people realized that other countries don't really pay tariffs because prices get passed on. So the tariff really only hurts the end user and the country importing the goods to begin with. It affects the people that wanted Donald Trump to make prices lower. So it's been a wild ride for some people. One of the stories that came out right after the election was this import-export company who a whole bunch of them voted for Trump, and they got sat down the day after and said, sorry, guys, we can't do Christmas bonuses this year. We've got to buy a whole year's worth of stuff to get ahead of Trump's tariffs. So there was a little bit of economic literacy problem we had in our country this election. Again.
Yeah. Trevor, you ever heard of a tariff before Trump?
Well, yeah, I've heard of them. I'm not like an expert on them, but they never seem like a great idea, especially with our closest ally and trading partner. That just it seems pretty ridiculous. And I find it funny too. Like so many, like I said earlier, so many Canadians were really excited that Trump won, and so many of them are like work in factories or work in manufacturing and work in industries that are going to be really affected by this. And it's just as much as people weren't thinking about how it'll affect them down south, that we weren't thinking here how it would affect us either.
Yeah. So it's really strange that when you've got three countries, right? We got Canada, America. We can't exclude Mexico, although we're going Canada centric with this episode.
Mm-hmm.
We can't exclude Mexico. But when you got three major countries that way that are that close, cooperation seems like the best path, not like not hardcore closing of borders and high taxes and tariffs. And sorry, Jester, there's so much background noise with you that I muted you a second ago, and I'm just gonna mute you again. Sorry. Whatever you're up to over there is fine, but what's interesting, or one of the things that I hear Trump saying, is how America spends so much more in Canada than Canada spends in America. But in Canada, we sell the raw materials, right? We sell the things that are the most expensive. So it has nothing really to do with America spending more. It has to do with the goods we're selling them are things like our chat has pointed out, aluminum, right? Or oil is another one, soft lumber, right? So apparently house prices in America have gone up, although compared to Canada, I'm sure it's laughable in the price difference, but houses in America have gone up, and that's because of taxes on soft lumber. And the thing that I find the most interesting, or the one that I feel is maybe even more important, and it probably has a lot to do with where I live. And Trevor, you're not too far away. I'm in the Niagara region, right? So it's electricity country out here. 60% of the hydro we generate is sent over the border. Could you imagine Daedalus, could you imagine a 25% hike on your hydro bill?
Actually, I used to work for a power company in Illinois, so I can easily imagine what that looks like.
Illinois is one of the biggest of all the states that
Yes.
Canada exports electricity to. Illinois is like all powered by Canada.
There's a couple nuke plants down there in the north, but
Yeah,
the
but your
southern part of the
plutonium
state-
is ours too.
Yeah, true. Yes. But the electric bills are a really fascinating thing for me because I spent 6 years working in a call center for an electric company. That's one of those things that people feel it in because they don't expect price fluctuations.
Right.
Yeah, if there was going to be one like expense that would shadow over top of everyone complaining about grocery prices, I think would be utility bills.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that it's a variable thing. Obviously, there are some families that fret about utility bills immensely because they have a hard time paying them. But there's a large portion of people, and particularly in that area in Illinois, where the Chicago suburban area, they just auto pay bills every month and don't care until something happens and they've got $300, $400 taken out of their account.
Yeah, yeah,
and that's when they would call me going, "Why is my bill so high?" Well,
yeah. So, bottom line is these tariffs that Trump is proposing is like this 25% tax he thinks Canada's going to pay. The reality is Canada's just going to raise the price of everything by 25%, passing the expense off onto Americans. But that still doesn't work because now we are going to lose. Americans will be able to afford less. Therefore, they'll buy less. Therefore, we'll export less. The number I heard is $7 billion in losses. For Canada,
Yes.
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money here too. Don't let the $1 trillion budgets fool you.
Yeah.
The kicker is that Donald Trump doesn't have a sophisticated understanding of this kind of stuff. No. Neither, incidentally, does the other public face of his administration, Elon Musk. Elon Musk, yes, apparently they're having a very happy time. I'm very happy for them. Elon Musk goes on Twitter and he does these 4-word answers that drive me nuts, which he's doing to drive people like me nuts. But he goes, someone tweets about, oh yeah, the tariffs will bring a manufacturing back to America. And Elon Musk just tweets back, this will work. I just go, no, it won't.
No.
Yeah. What kind of backlash do you expect, Trevor? Like, what would you think would happen if Trudeau turned around and went right back at you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I'm at a loss here. I actually don't know. Like it's hard to say. I mean, he's not going to be liked less or more. People have just made up their mind about Trudeau. It doesn't really matter what he does. People are going to hate it, but there's going to be a huge effect on our economy either way. And it's I don't know if it's the right move or
yeah,
what.
He so for anyone who's not aware, Justin Trudeau has a tax that he created in Canada called the carbon tax, where companies and corporations who are heavy polluters have to pay a certain amount of tax, depending on how much pollution they contribute.
Yeah,
and I personally kind of think I get it. So it's not much different in a way as a tariff because the companies themselves, they just put that expense back on the consumer at the bottom line, right? But then as the consumer, we get people in the lower tax brackets, we get rebates in the mail and things of that sort. So it's an expense I'm personally willing to live with for the environment, right? Because like if it's the only thing I do for the environment, that and like recycling from home, then you know what? It's easier than me having to go spend a weekend planting trees or something. Not that I wouldn't do that, but I can't do it every weekend. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't do it too. That might hurt my back.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It wouldn't do anything for Trudeau's popularity.
Yeah. What it would do for us, it's tough to say. And I think, because I mean, I'm okay with the carbon tax, but I know most people definitely are not.
Yeah.
And even though, like, I got in a few arguments with some Polyev lovers on TikTok recently about like they say that he wants tax breaks and stuff, but he also voted against Trudeau's GST tax break. And then people are like, well, it's not much money. And then it's like, okay, well, it doesn't matter if it's not much money. He still voted against it. And then other people are like, he'll make us pay it back. It's like, how is he going to track us down and make us pay back the dollar that we saved on our grocery? Like, it's
Well, Trudeau, I very much like him. And just to grind gears and to piss people off, I call him the greatest prime minister of my lifetime, and it pisses just people right off. It's great. I mean, of the stuff he's done has had the most impact on me as a Canadian, especially just legalizing marijuana, which was like one of the first things he did out of the gate. Like, well, a couple of years into out of the gate, but still, it's like, thank goodness. But here's where I think is kind of neat. It would suck if Trudeau had to put a tariff, but I would understand that, well, if they're going to do it, we've got to do it, right? Because that's how trade wars work. But Trudeau is purposely going to put tariffs on Harley Davidson parts, whiskey, cherries, apparently. Anyways, the strategy he has, I applaud, because he's going to put the tariffs on all things red states buy.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
All things red states buy that are ostensibly luxury items.
Yeah.
Well, I think the heart of this is people's ideas about taxation are screwed up.
Yeah.
Like, people think, oh, they're going to put a tariff, and that means I don't have to pay taxes anymore. And
oh, really? People think
that? Yeah, that's kind of the impression I get from looking online. Like the Trump people online are a little crazy. They're all also like having a good cackle about turning Canada into the 51st state.
Yeah.
Maybe go read a history book. But anyway, they think that it's a way to get out of taxes, and like, I don't think they quite understand that money has velocity, and it works like they make you spend more money on tariffs. Like, for example, in the United States, we, much like most countries after the Industrial Revolution, funded a lot of the government through tariffs, almost exclusively prior to the Civil War, and then after for quite some time till World War I. So, but they don't understand that one of the biggest pushbacks against this and why the income tax was introduced was because tariffs are regressive as a tax. They make people who are poor pay more for everyday goods and services. So, like, it's just this fundamental ignorance of kind of the economics of how their daily lives work that kind of drove this idea. And like, there's a kind of like, there's a little part of me that to borrow a term from the English, hopes that Donald Trump becomes the Quango president. Like, they put a penny in the corner of the Oval Office and tell him to find it, and then someone else like JD Vance just sort of does whatever he's going to do, which is bad for us, but hopefully it won't be just as monumentally stupid as a 25% tariff.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to, on the topic of stupid, the spark that lit the flame of this panel, which is Trump and his tweet machine. I'll read this in its entirety this time. So Donald Trump on Truth Social says, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau, the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the result of which will be truly spectacular for all. DJT." Yeah, Trevor, what do you think? Is this cute and adorable?
Some would say if he was a smarter man, this would be a call to war, but nobody thinks he's a smart man, so they just assume he either thinks that he's a governor or had no concept of repercussions or what this means for international relations or anything because he's a moron.
I
And
should
he's
leave
trying to
that.
be funny.
I should leave that
But
up even just so we can really look at that stupidity.
yeah. And it's funny too, like again, on arguing on TikTok, there's so many Canadians that are like, no, it's most Canadians want to be the 51st state. It's like, no, you surround yourself with like-minded people. You're hearing like-minded things being said to you and assume everybody thinks that. No, most Canadians do not want to become American, mostly because of the healthcare stuff, but there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't if this was in any other context, I could see this as being maybe a little bit kind of like, we love Canada so much we think of them as like our 51st
Yeah.
state. But coming from Donald Trump and the resulting tariffs and stuff, it sounds a lot more to me like Canada better get in line.
Yeah.
What do you think, Daedalus?
Well, are we absolutely positively sure he doesn't think that Canada's a state already? Because he's already a little batty.
True.
Like, no, I don't think he has any particular idea of consequence, really, particularly after being elected again. Because one of the things I think is important to note is Donald Trump started running for president, well, basically the minute Biden took office. And he did this because he understood that he could take this and use it as a defense against his many legal charges, the 90 plus indictments. So, and he could take that argument. I think he has now this kind of feeling of invincibility. The Republicans have the House. The Republicans have an iron grip on our Supreme Court. They have the Senate. And like, he doesn't care. Like, if you've been paying attention to the nominations he's been putting forward for cabinet positions, they're laughable.
Yeah.
I think he thinks he can bully his way through. And he doesn't have an understanding of the consequences. He's never felt consequences. He's been inured to them his entire life.
Yeah.
Mexico did something very similar where they said, you're full of crap. Wrote a letter saying we will continue to cooperate on the border. And Trump supporters like, yeah, we got Donald Trump to make Mexico cooperate on the border, because they seem to genuinely believe that Mexico was just, punting people over the border or something.
Yeah.
It's just it's this mass delusion that like you can't penetrate. Like you said, they're surrounded by like-minded people, Trevor. You can't penetrate that delusion because they don't want to have it penetrated. They don't want to understand the relationship between America and Canada or America and Mexico. They think this is funny. He did it because people think it's funny. And obviously, as a Canadian, I can't imagine you would.
Again, like I said, under different contexts, perhaps. But this seems more like disrespect. Sorry, Trev, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, because one of the other things too, I think Don Jr. was on some show talking about it, how the tariffs for Canada and Mexico would be based on if, they're not sending our criminals over and we're not sending our drugs and stuff. And it's like, have you been to a border? Because it's the people entering. If you're entering the U.S., it's U.S. employees that are checking people, right? It's not like there's a Canadian there being like, yeah, you're good to go. You're good to go. Like, it's their job to stop people from entering their country. How could we, as a part of the agreement, say that, like, yeah, we won't send any drugs over? It's not like Trudeau's sitting there, in a warehouse filling bags of drugs and sending them out. Like, these are like, it's just such a absurd thing to say.
Are you learning anything, Jester? Do you have any questions or anything?
I am. I did want to comment on.
Maybe step a little closer to your mic if you want to comment for us so we can hear you. Hello?
Can I be heard a little better now?
Oh, you're fantastic now, buddy. All right, what do you got for us? Share.
Okay, so I just want to comment here on the magnificent AI technology that allows Donald Trump to translate from those big egg crayon scribbles that he makes into this approximation of human speech.
I actually don't believe that he's written an actual tweet himself. The only ones he writes are the ones that are all capitals, I'll bet. He's got an assistant that probably writes the things that he says.
I bet he wrote Kaveve.
That was probably
That's
the day
kind
that
of my thing.
Trudeau ran.
Like, I definitely get, like, it's insulting that this particular guy is saying Governor Justin Trudeau of the state of Canada. But at the same time, I'm just blown away by the idea that anybody thinks that he actually typed this out. Because I don't ever, like, it doesn't say Donald Trump enough times. And we all know that he can only engage with sentences that say his name like 5 fucking times. Oops, sorry. I don't know what your rules on cursing are.
We're talking about Trump. Could you imagine a live stream about Trump where you couldn't allow cursing?
Well,
Okay, that's true.
the other thing about Donald Trump is, like, we know he's not a smart man. We know, particularly from the defense establishment, from the first time, like, oh, the presidential daily briefing needs to be 2 pages long and have pictures.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Well, I could even go back here, and this image that I chose for the thumbnail is not one I made. This is from his Truth Social site or page or whatever. And the irony here is it's Trump next to a Canadian flag looking at some rocky Himalayan mountains. So it's just weird. Yeah.
AI is a hell of a technology, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. So someone commented here that they were thinking that part of Trump's plan was just to make Canadians mad at Trudeau. Personally, I think it might have had the opposite effect, however, because I'm going to introduce you guys to someone new to the stage now, not in person, but we've talked about Justin Trudeau, so everyone knows he's our prime minister here in Canada. We got the president-elect Trump, who's going to be president again soon. This next little thing here is the Ontario flag, and Ontario has a premier, Doug Ford. Doug Ford, not the most loved guy in Ontario either. Like, for example, I heard he's sitting on $7 billion worth of healthcare money that he hasn't released yet, for example. Like, he's just not the brightest guy.
He wants to be mayor of Toronto too. Like, it's
he wants to be demoted.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be building homes, for example, but he's too busy manipulating a way to get another highway built. Apparently in Canada, if you want to get elected, promise a new highway. That's just okay, weird.
Yeah.
But anyways, Doug Ford would be like the leader of the Republican Party at this point, basically coming out to say to Trump, like, what? I don't think so. So check this out.
I found his comments unfair. I found him insulting. It's like a family member stabbing you right in the heart. We want to work together. We will work together, and we'll resolve this problem.
Premier, do you want to? Would you think that Canada should retaliate in kind if President-elect Trump follows through with this threat? Should all American goods be taxed at the same tariff?
Well, hopefully we won't come to that, but if it does, there is no choice. We have to retaliate.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound to me like the idea that Trump is trying to generate hate towards Trudeau is really working, because he's literally got a major leader of opposition coming out to saying, hold on a minute, Trump, you're pushing the wrong buttons here.
Yeah.
Before I let you guys loose the comment, I'm just going to invite and welcome Ditso to the stage. How are you?
Pura vida, Ewa. How you doing, everyone?
Good. How are you? Canadian, American?
I'm a Central American, Costa Rica.
Oh, nice. Amazing.
I live here. I work here. This is my place. Half Venezuelan, half Costa Rican, or Tico.
All right, cool.
Nice. Yeah, cool.
So first, I want Trevor to go ahead and engage with that clip we just saw. Since Trevor and I are both in Ontario, we're familiar with Ford and his weirdness.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't like Ford at all. He's cut so much to mental health care and stuff too, which is something I care a lot about. And he's cut in every every area that I care a lot about. I do not like Ford, but again, yeah, he does seem to care sometimes, and he cares that Canadians are going to be hurt by this. So, yeah, it's just like he's giving us a common enemy, I guess. He's given all our political rivals a common enemy to work together against. So,
And he controls a lot of that hydropower that that Daedalus Media gets to power his internet.
yeah, exactly.
That was a segue for you, Daedalus. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Well, Rob Ford is very well known to Midwesterners too, in the United States. His antics kind of cross borders.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think there's a particular thing, like there are some Canadians I've heard express that, the United States is only 10 years ahead of Canada politically. I kind of think that maybe looking at this particular crisis, such as it is, might make some people pump the brakes, because you could sort of see even Rob Ford, the functional head, or Doug Ford, excuse me, the functional head of the Conservative Party is going, wait, this is bad for Canadians. Like, and yeah, it's a disaster all around. 25% tariffs. Like it's just people who are already having a hard time are going to be hurt by this. So I think it's good that he recognizes it. I think we're sort of in that Trump is having his honeymoon after winning the election phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hope that someone comes along and says, no, bad boy, and slaps him. But
did so. Central America, you said. So, Trump is planning tariffs across the board globally. I'm sure that Central America exports quite a few things to America and vice versa. Central America also has like the Panama Canal, which is American owned, or used to be American owned, or it's managed American. Yeah, it used to be. Yeah. Yeah. So, so why don't you share some insight with us?
So, well, let me just introduce myself. I'm 43 years old. I am a political activist here in Central America. I base myself off Afro-Indigenous matters, human rights. I work issues of drug policy reform. One of my major works is the legalization of cannabis throughout the whole region. I already did it in Costa Rica. I helped in Mexico, helped in Colombia, I helped in Panama, so on. So that's pretty much my area of work. But I also work as a congressional person who, how do you say it in English?
Lobbyist?
Kind of a civil lobbyist, yes. So I don't work, I work for my own type of organizations that are entirely civil NGOs in that sense. So just to give you that perspective. But yeah, Trump to us is just showing that United States is catching up to what has happened in Latin America for the past 124 years with all the populists and demagogues that we've had, giving us their beautiful insight. We call him, many of us here in Latin America call Donald Trump the Hugo Chavez of the United States, or the Daniel Ortega, or the Fidel Castro, or the Pinochet, or the Videla, or I can go on. So anyhow, the main thing here, the news that came out just 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, is that in the event of tariffs being imposed to Mexico, Costa Rica is going to impose tariffs to the United States.
Which that's going to be the response to from everybody, basically, because that's the natural response. Yeah.
And there's a lot of business here from the United States. Well, and what's interesting in that sense is that it's going to go across the board, even if that hurts us, because there's a lot of the service industry here, from sports books to porn sites to AT&T to Capital One to so many other companies have their a lot of the customer service derived from here to the United States. So the response is, look, we did it 4 years ago. We're going to 8 years ago. We're going to do it again. We are not going to let United States think that they can run over us in any way, shape, or capacity. If they're going to put tariffs, we're going to put tariffs, and that's going to hurt their economy more than it's going to hurt all our economies.
Yeah, it's going to hurt everybody. Yeah. I would imagine South America's probably got a lot of produce exported over to America. Obviously, cars. Yeah, but I think it's fair to be careful. We don't want to pin all of our American friends down. Believe me, it's not all of them that. Not everybody voted for Trump, right? But yeah.
No,
but enough.
Look what's happening right now with Huawei, the Chinese telephone company.
Mm-hmm.
They've expanded throughout Central America, and they have beaten any other communications service provider in that sense. And right now, Huawei just won in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, up to Guatemala. As I'm aware, they already won the 5G services in those countries. And yes, there's questions of corruption, etc. That's a whole bunch of conversation as always. But anyway, Huawei is right there, right on the back, on the so-called back door of the United States.
Yeah. Well, your arrival to the stage, the timing couldn't be better because it drives me to a topic. One of the things that Trump wants, one of the things that Trump is saying, like, well, if you don't want the tariffs, then you're going to have to do something for me. One of the things that he wants is for Canada and Mexico to close our borders, whatever that means. I mean, Canada has the largest undefended border with America, so how do we close that? And one of the reasons that he wants us to close our borders is fentanyl. Now, if you guys didn't know, Canada, I believe the number was like they found possibly 80 kilos of fentanyl traveling from Canadian side over to the American side, versus like 3,000 kilos of fentanyl coming in from the Mexico into the American side. But meanwhile, he wants Canada to like beef up security on our borders. The strange part and the scary part is the province of Alberta is kind of like, okay. So the province of Alberta is promising drones and helicopters to patrol those borders. Daedalus, why don't you start us off on that idea?
Well, smuggler is going to smuggle ultimately. To the best of my knowledge, like you said, there's not much in the way of drug trade that comes out of Canada into the United States. I think it's largely the other way around. The trick of this is, and I'm sure Ditso is probably going to agree, that border control is very rarely about interdicting smuggling effectively. You can do that without closing borders. You can do that with all the measures you have available right now. Border control, in particular, is really about the maintenance and control of low-cost labor and the ability to kind of make labor insecure. So particularly, we've had this bugbear about Mexico for decades now, of Mexican labor coming over, and like it's not like we don't benefit immensely from it, but we do benefit immensely from certain people like farming companies, ConAgra and such, benefit from the ability to kind of suppress that labor cost, make it insecure, because you get this kind of exchange. If you have regular open borders, people come over, they do work, they go back. If they don't think they can come over and go back freely, they don't leave. And this is kind of where the problem comes in. So suddenly you've got a captive population of undocumented immigrants who don't have the ability to advocate for themselves, have to earn a living somehow, and they can be easily taken advantage of by people who will pay them cut rates with cash under the table. It's not really about security or any of those things. It's very much, or stopping drug trade. It's very much about creating a disadvantageous situation for people who work in other countries and come back home.
Yeah. What do you got to add there, Trevor?
No, I mean, not much. I mean, we're having some things here. There's a lot of fights about temporary workers in Canada and stuff too, and foreign workers, and I don't know. There's just so much racism tied in with that, and so much just taking advantage of people, and and then also pointing a finger at the people we're taking advantage of and being like, this is all your fault.
Yeah. Ditso, what do you think about the idea
Ooh,
of open borders?
okay, this is my area of
Yeah,
expertise, and you're gonna love it.
You got real red. So let's see.
Yeah. So let me start by saying this and give a perspective of my own personal experience. I am a migrant. I have been a migrant. And returned home. So I know the nuances in regards to being a migrant. In my position, my father worked as the ambassador of Venezuela, and from the age of 0 to the age of 16, I had lived in 6 different countries here in the Western Hemisphere. I had lived in Venezuela, Costa Rica, Panama, United States, Mexico, Argentina.
Wow.
And then eventually I lived in Ecuador. So I understand what is the mobilization that happens here in the Western Hemisphere. But let's demystify 2 things. There's no such things as open borders. There has never been such a thing as open borders. Since the instauration of these nations here in the last 200, 250 years, the process of borders have always been through the channels of borders. If you arrive to an airport, you're going through migration. If you arrive through vote, you're going through aduanas, or you're going through the migration also offices. So this idea of open borders is the first telltale of bullshit, of xenophobic bullshit from the United States.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second, if we're going to start talking about what and how displacement has created irregular, aka illegal migration, then one of the major offenders on that impact of displacement is, without doubt, the war on drugs of the last 60 years, how it has impacted via the mandate of the United States, Richard Nixon onwards, and through the United Nations, through the 3 international accords, and how that impacts as a one policy fits all in the last 60 years. So we have to converse that the first offender is the war on drugs, the violence that it creates, and the displacement. The second offender that we see are the political instability that are both internal and the impacts of foreign policy of the United States within our countries. So it has that duality of internal and external pressures that then create political instability in the countries. One of those best examples that we see are, Haiti, Colombia, back on the days of the FARC, that has reduced. Venezuela, with the 8 million people that have exodus in the last 25 years of the Hugo Chavez. And then we saw it back on the day on the civil wars in the Central America. So that instabilities of those examples that we see also creates displacement. And one thing I worked, what was it, on 2016 or 2016, if you use Gregorian calendar. I tend not to use Gregorian calendar for other reasons, but anyways. So 2016, we had an impact of about 2,500 to 3,000 Africans coming from the Darien Gap. In fact, just recently, the new election of Laurentino, what's his name, the new president of Panama. Give me a sec. Laurentino Cortizo. That's the new election. Nito. That's what they call him, Nito. Nito, one of his proposals was closing the Darien Gap. Of course, you're looking at the Darien Gap as an area of 1,859 kilometers wide, with 80 kilometers, give and take, on both sides, the Colombian as well as the Costa Rican side. So that in itself created other conditions. There are many things that we can talk about how those Africans arrived through the Darien Gap, through the northern section of South America, entered through the Colombian border through Panama, and started going up. And once they reached here, United States owes a debt to the Ortega regime in Nicaragua, the dictatorship of Ortega, because as those Africans reached the border between Nicaragua and Costa Rica, the southern border of Nicaragua, northern border of Costa Rica, Ortega stopped them. And we had to eat that shit for almost 2 years. We had to provide food, everything to those people. I was there. I've had to take bodies out of the Darien Gap. I've had to take out a body of an 8-year-old kid who died drowned. I've done the same in the border of the United States. So this type of situations, the reasons why the displacement has happened, it's not something that it's new. We've been telling the United States for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years why those displacements happen. In fact, just this year, we've had 5 major inter-American meetings between the United States, the Biden administration, and in Guatemala, and in Honduras, here in Costa Rica, etc. There were several meetings after the famous words of Kamala Harris saying, don't come here. I was there when she said that. I'm like, is she fucking with us?
Yeah.
You know? But anyhow, the problem is the United States doesn't want to solve the reasons why those displacements happen, and irregular migration, aka illegal migration, is happening. And we want to fix it.
Yeah.
But at the end, the reason Trump gets elected because of that rhetoric of migration, just to conclude, Trump said, well, they're sending their criminals and they're emptying their asylums, blah, 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 blah. And I just turn around and say to Amaga, yeah, and you're sending us your pedophiles and your fraudsters and your criminals to our countries because they're running away. So,
That's a good point.
Should we accept? Should we, kick out the gringos that come here that are pedophiles and criminals and turn them back home?
Yeah, it's terrible. The mass deportation that Trump is threatening, like, just to switch gears a little bit too. I find it interesting that if he was president while he was still married to his second wife, that would technically mean that Eric and Donald Trump Jr. would have to be deported because his wife was an illegal immigrant when he married her. Just saying.
Well, the Darien Gap, I'm sorry, I'm correct. That's the land bridge between, it's a fairly inhospitable land bridge between South America and Central America, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly dangerous to cross that, right?
Only us indigenous people from here know how to cross it, and even we don't venture it. We know how dangerous it is.
Yeah.
Yes. I was under the impression that it was functionally impenetrable.
By foot? No. And you can still drive. You need 4x4s, and there still are ways of getting through it. It's just that, it's dangerous.
I was just imagining the desperation of someone to take that journey. Because obviously they would take it, and I just can't. That's no, you're absolutely right. America has no real interest in solving this problem. Like I said, they very much. It's a racism problem, to be sure. It's an economic problem because it benefits us to have exploitable workers. There's no real interest here in solving the problem. And you're right, Kamala Harris had no interest in solving the problem. You have 2 parties that functionally, one party that obviously agitates strongly against people crossing the border, migrants, and then you have another party that accepts the fundamental premise that the Republicans are putting forward. There's no real attitude to solve it. And the rhetoric, again, this is one of those things you talked about, the mass deportations. The economic impact on the United States would be incalculable. Not to mention the actual expense of doing this, and the expense it would be for the countries that receive those people in. It's hard to imagine Donald Trump being able to do that.
It would really, agriculturally speaking, I feel like Trump is going to burn down all fruits and vegetables in America. Between the high tariffs between South America, Mexico, and Canada, and then he's going to export basically all of that labor that, generally speaking, works in agricultural for picking and harvest and all that stuff.
But I don't
getting-
think Donald Trump has ever eaten a fruit or a vegetable. So
I
I don't
know
think
that's what I
it's-
mean.
fair.
He's not thinking
More,
about it.
more to the point, if you are here, you have a whole lot of undocumented workers who are doing janitorial services, who work in our restaurants and kitchens as line chefs. The economic impact is massive. There's just jobs that Americans refuse to do.
Yeah.
So what's interesting on this is I'm going to put it in this perspective. Do you know what is the current population of Latin America divided in 33 nations?
What is Latin America first? And no, I don't know the population. When you say Latin America, are you including like Mexico and all South America? or-
Mexico to Argentina plus Caribbean.
Okay.
Those 33 nations right there.
What's the population?
The current population from Mexico to Argentina plus the Caribbean is 650 million people.
Wow.
We more than double the population of the United States.
Yeah.
So the following question is, are people aware what are the four major countries that have more quantity of irregular migration towards the United States here in the Western Hemisphere? That would be
I don't think
Mexico, Honduras, Salvador, Guatemala. What we call the Triangle of the North plus Mexico.
Okay.
Right.
Then you have the migrations happening from Nicaragua, Venezuela, as the two, Haiti, obviously. But those, for example, if we look at the migration and the exodus of Venezuelans who have exited the Chavez regime and the Maduro regime in the last 25 years, 85% of those chose nearby countries, chose Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, Brazil, Costa Rica, up to Mexico. Out of the remaining 15%, about 10% chose United States. That's about 550,000.
Yeah.
Chose United States. And remaining 5% went to Europe, Africa, and Asia.
Yeah,
So
I feel like Trump's mass deportation too. He's not going to like return people where they came from. He's just going to dump them all on the Mexican side of the border and be like, "Get out of here."
yeah, Mexico's going to return them back and say, no. You have to find out how to, move these people. And especially because it's going to be an interesting relation seeing how Trump negotiates with a woman president, such as Claudia Sheinbaum.
Yeah, that's going to
He
be
didn't-
interesting. Daedalus, what do you think? Trump
didn't take-
negotiating with a female.
He didn't take that initial letter well, and I don't think it's going to go well. I think he doesn't
You think
like
it's a
strong,
weakness?
assertive women.
Do you think Trump dealing with a female prime minister or president is a weakness to him?
I not amongst his base, but amongst everyone else who already hates him. Yes, you saw it in how he acted with the debate with Hillary Clinton, that he was like off put, and you saw how Kamala Harris dominated him in this debate, and not that it helped. He doesn't know how to deal with that. He likes subservient people around him to begin with. And like the pushback he already got from the president of Mexico in that letter, talking about it was they didn't deal with that well. They kind of invented their own reality about it.
Yeah, pretty much. Claudia Sheinbaum was the continuing of the project of AMLO. I think it's going to be a very interesting pressure point against the United States, and she ain't no pushover. She is somebody who's going to stand up and going to say enough is enough. And if that's the thing, we have no choice. The only choice we have is to maintain as best as cordial relationships with the United States, because we don't want FBI, CIA, or any of those three-letter agencies coming back down to our countries and making our shit even worse than the problems that we may have already.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'll be pretty safe to say that Canadian and Mexican relations will continue and be maintained one way or the other. But yeah, it's a weird thing to think about. There was a time where, as a kid, when we were always kids, and you're sitting in the playground and stuff, and some kid, probably me, would say something ridiculous like, "What if Canada and America was to go to war?" I was always told, like, yeah, that's a stupid what if game to play. That would never happen. Like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm still not thinking that's really realistic, technically speaking, like full on guns blazing style war. But a trade war,
Canadian Bacon style. Yeah.
yeah. Someone in our chat pointed out that one reason why Canada should be thinking about cutting down or closing the border, even though, like Ditso said, our borders have never really been open, but we
Yeah.
get a lot of gun traffic from America over here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So does south of the border.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of the recent case, Mexico, before the transition of the new president.
Mm-hmm.
Mexico sued U.S. gun manufacturers January of this year, and that is on the court system itself. And right now, last news, and this was published by AP News, I'll put it up here. Supreme Court will weigh Mexico's $10 billion lawsuit against U.S. makers. And most probable is going to say, no, Mexico can't sue U.S. guns manufacturers, blah, 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 blah. So Mexico's going to take it to arbitration. And it's going to look another way of making that pressure. Why? Because that's a fact. The accessibility of guns in the United States is feeding the trafficking of those guns towards not only Mexico, but through all the Central America, down to South America, plus the Caribbean.
Yeah, I mean, in Canada, gun ownership isn't a right; it's a privilege. Every gun owner in Canada knows that.
Yeah.
Myself, I've only ever seen one gun in my whole life. Trevor, do you even know anyone who even has a gun?
Oh, I'm from a small town. Yeah, no,
Okay,
I
right.
know many gun owners. I've
Okay.
seen many guns. I've held guns. I've never fired one, but yeah, no, I've seen many guns. But it's all hunting. Like it's
Yeah. It's
Here for
nice. No Canadian owns a gun that could kill a pasture of cows in 30 seconds.
So for us in Costa Rica, guns is an extension of the right of property. So you have a right to have property, and gun is a mobile property that you have the right to own. But there are clear and concise regulations in regards to that. One thing that is forbidden here is semi or automatic weapons. You can have sort of handguns, but that's basically it. And plus, here in Costa Rica, we abolished the military 74 years ago. So,
right.
No handguns in Canada either, for that matter. By the way,
obviously, the United States is not that. In fact, so there's an organization that does something called the Small Arms Survey. They survey, they try to do an approximation of all the small arms in the world, so rifles, handguns, light machine guns, etc. Approximately 45% of the world's small arms are in private ownership here in the United States. But something on the order of 485 million. And obviously that's substantially more weapons than we have people.
Yeah. Per capita, Canada actually has more guns than America, actually.
Yeah, size-wise.
Yeah.
It's concentrated very much in about half the country here. Basically, 1 out of 2 Americans owns a gun. I know very few people who haven't.
We just got that one Canadian guy who owns every gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a major problem, though, to be sure. And I can go on for quite some time over the 2007 Heller case, in which we decided to destroy the entire concept of the Second Amendment. But I'll save that for another day.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to steer back a little bit on the topic of like Canada and America. Well, Canada and versus Trump situation. And I want to introduce our viewers to another player. So I'm kind of tricking my audience right now, because at some point in the next 12 months, not even in the next like 10 months, there will be a Canadian election. Okay, so we've now talked about Trudeau, and I'd like to introduce someone else who's kind of important in Canada. So if you didn't know, in Canada we got multiple parties. We don't just have 2 parties. Okay, Justin Trudeau is the leader of the Liberal Party, and that's what makes him the Prime Minister. So the Liberal Party has a majority sort of control in the Parliament, or they have the most seats at least. So then they nominate their leader, and that's how we get a Prime Minister. We don't vote the Prime Minister technically; we vote the party, right? So with that, we've got our own version of Trump, who isn't as big of an idiot, but probably just as dangerous, Pierre Poilievre. But the first person I want to introduce you guys to is Jagmeet Singh. So
Yeah, I've met him.
yeah, so Pierre Poilievre is the Conservative Party, so he's our Republican leader, if you will. Trudeau would be kind of like our Democrat leader. If there was a party that was super Democrat, in fact, the party's name is the New Democrat Party, the NDP. So this is Jagmeet Singh commenting on Trump and Trudeau.
So what is the response to these serious threats by the Prime Minister?
And of course, now we're going to do this again.
The Prime Minister is telling us it's okay, oh, he's just joking. Donald Trump's just making jokes, no big deal. It is a big deal. On top of that, what we're seeing from Trudeau is that anytime Trump says jump, he says how high. That is not strength. That is not actually responding to what's going on. And then when Trump trash talks Canada, we got the leader of the Conservative Party repeating that garbage. That hurts Canada. That hurts Canadian workers. What we need to do is acknowledge that Trump is a bully. Bullies look for weakness. That's why he's trolling us. So we need to send a message of strength. We need to have a real war room ready to go, fighting for Canadian jobs with unions at the table. We need to put in place and get ready to put in place retaliatory tariffs. We have to make it clear, if Trump picks this fight, it's going to hurt both of us, and it's not a fight that he wants. We have to show strength, that we're willing to do whatever it takes to protect Canadian jobs. We have to also make sure it's very clear that tariffs on Canada don't just hurt Canadians, it's going to hurt Americans. We need to make that message very clear, make sure the pain is felt, and so he knows this is not the direction he wants to go.
Yeah, so the leader of the New Democratic Party, great guy. It isn't realistic at this stage that their party will win our next election. However, every party is important because, let's say for instance, the Conservative Party, which is our Republican Party, were to get a certain amount of seats in our House of Commons. Right? It's all about the number of chairs. Okay. Yeah. If the Liberals have less seats than the Conservative Party, the Liberals will need to be friends with the New Democratic Party in order to be able to maintain a little bit of control in Parliament, right? Yeah. Because then they can outvote anything that the Conservatives want to do and stuff like that. So even though myself, I would probably still vote Liberal, I think the NDP party is pretty strong.
Yeah,
I mean, Trevor, you said you met him.
Yeah, well, just when I worked at a restaurant, served them. So we didn't have like a meeting of the minds or anything, but yeah, no, I'm an NDP guy though. Like, there's definitely things I don't love about Trudeau. I don't mind the guy, but there's things I don't love about him. But I think NDP is just the party that aligns closer with my views on things and my.
Well, that's kind of like the neater part about Canadian politics that I'm learning too, though, is that if you wanted to vote NDP, it wouldn't be like when during the American election, everybody was like, you just got to vote Kamala because otherwise Trump's going to win. If somebody said, I'm going to vote third party or I'm going to vote someone else, everyone got all up on them. Like, you can't do that. You're throwing away, you're wasting your vote.
Yeah.
In Canada, Trevor's vote
my riding,
be wasted.
Yeah, my riding's usually NDP anyway. So like my vote helps the person. So
yeah,
it would actually be the opposite, where
because the party you vote for would still get a seat, and therefore have some control, right?
Yeah,
you see, so it's
my cat needs to be fed, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
I see his cat. He obviously saw my dog and raised me his cat. Anyway,
cats always on the internet. I don't know why.
It is. Avery does pretty well too. But at any rate, you end up with a very different situation. Obviously, you're talking about the Westminster system that Canada has, parliamentary system. So, like, as I understand it, the Liberal Party is not doing well right now, polling wise. Like, they're looking at the prospect of a complete collapse. We don't have a system that takes into account political parties. They're kind of an afterthought for Americans. So we don't have that kind of resiliency where you kind of have the option of a coalition government. I would I think you're right. There was a problem in our election. A lot of people, Dearborn, Michigan is a great example, and really this gets into what I've been working on a lot lately. Is the day before the election, Bill Clinton rolls into Dearborn, Michigan, which has one of the largest Muslim populations in the United States, and starts lecturing them about why they need to vote for Kamala Harris in the wake of what's happening right now in Gaza. They didn't take it well. It was one of the few places where a third-party candidate won more than votes than Kamala Harris, and people voted for Donald Trump. It was the extreme arrogance of Bill Clinton's like discussion too, given how he screwed up Israel and Palestine in his own term, was breathtaking to me. This is a man who basically tried to sell the Palestinians down the river and said, well, they're jerks for not taking it and it's their fault. It was absolutely like astonishing to me that he decided to do, like, was he drunk? So I don't we don't have that kind of resiliency in our system. When we have new parties emerge, they basically consume one of the other parties.
Yeah.
So, for example, right before the Civil War, the 1850s saw the general collapse of the Whig Party in the face of the Democratic Party, particularly over the issue of slavery. A new party is formed. The Republicans of today gets formed in the election of 1860. Abraham Lincoln ends up winning, and that sort of catapults us into our Civil War. We don't have that kind of resiliency. We mark in American history, we mark it by our political history by party systems. When one party rises and then its opposition rises and then it falls. They don't have that kind of resiliency. And we have been on the cusp for a very long time of both of these parties failing. The Republicans feel
I feel like Republican is I'm surprised a MAGA party hasn't risen out of that, frankly.
Well, it's interesting. Like, only about 20% of the country, and you look at the totals, voted for Trump, and only about 60% of the eligible population votes here, at best. The Republicans don't win when more than 60% of the population votes.
Interesting.
This is why they push things like, oh, voter ID and voter fraud, and illegals are voting in our election. They aren't, not in any significant numbers at any rate. But what it's all about is it's about getting that excuse to suppress more votes so that the voter turnout is down so they continue to win. It looks to the outside right now like there's this great MAGA block of people, like it's a huge portion of the country. It's really a very tiny portion that is suppressing people in order to stay in power.
Let me let's start addressing some questions out of our chat here. If you were finished that thought, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add into the things. I met Singh in the Interpol. I don't know if you're aware, but between us, the America, Canada, and everybody else, we have every 2 years meetings between Congresses and different people of Congresses in the the Inter-American Parliamentary meetings. And I had the opportunity of meeting him there. I also met that conservative dude, Paul Revere. Yeah. So what I'm gonna tell you, and I really wanted to mention this and get it out there. People have to come to realize two things. One of the most important things in a independent nation, like Canada, like Costa Rica, like United States, etc., is not so much the president, but the Congress. And it's in the Congress that reality takes shape.
Yeah.
So in that sense, what you were saying about liberals with Trudeau have been in power 12, 14 years now?
9 years.
No, 9 years. You're right. It's been 9 years.
I hope so. I hope I'm right.
Yeah, no, well, 9 to 12 years.
He was elected like the day before Trump was elected, like a whole year before, 2015.
A whole year. Yeah, I remember that. So the deterioration of the Liberal Party, it's logical to see after a 9-year period or 12-year period of being in that control. What's going to happen between the Conservatives or the new Democratic Party, NDP, etc. That's anybody's guess right now. The election period hasn't even officially begun.
Well, we could pretty much spell it out for you. We know how it's going to go. But in Canada, there's a kind of like a how much power are we going to give them though?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So like, we're pretty confident the Conservatives going to win.
Yeah.
But what we don't want to see happen is Conservative to have more than half the seats in the House. If Conservatives have more than half the seats in the House, shit's going to get bad.
Another day, a very interesting, fascinating conversation, but that's for another day. I would propose and put it on the table is how in Western Hemisphere, how we went from the processes of independence, the caudillos, what we call here the caudillos, or those leaders like Bolivar or O'Higgins or Washington in the United States, etc., to then develop in the first 100 years that attempt to multi-party, and then on turn of century, how it became bipartisan system and more aggravated after the end of the Second World War, the last 74 years, and how in the last 20 years, 25 years, we've seen a breakage of that bipartisan models to then reestablish multi-party systems throughout the whole region in that sense. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I mean, no, this has been a great panel and a great conversation, and I was super grateful to have all of you join me here.
Mhm.
I'd like to address a couple of questions that came into the chat here. So from Raven Darkstar, Skeptic Spin, is it true that Canada has closed the borders to U.S. immigrants? No, Canada is never going to close their borders to immigrants. But we've slowed down a lot. And it's not for what you think. It's not because we don't want them taking our jobs. It's not that. Canada lets lots of people around the world, Americans and other people, come study here. We have, even though we may not have the Ivy Leagues, our schools are amazing. So a lot of students want to come and learn here. Problem is they don't want to leave. After they live here for 4 or 5 years and study, there's a new problem where they kind of stay. And Canada's immigration policies, if I'm not mistaken, are pretty lenient on if you can become a citizen, you can sponsor family to come, right? So one student staying and earning employment means they can now bring mom and dad and all that stuff over. All of this is great. I don't think I've ever heard a Canadian say immigrants are taking our jobs. I don't think that's been an issue. But they're taking our houses. We don't have anywhere to live, and that's for everybody in the country. There's so much problem with
I think they're the scapegoat for that. I don't know if it's necessarily that's what's happening. I think there's a lot more to be blamed on.
Every corner needs to be considered. But yeah, you're right. They're more of a scapegoat. I shouldn't have said it that way, but you're right.
But no, I get what you're saying. Like, and that's where a lot of people are that's where a lot of people are kind of pointing their fingers. It's not like there's none of that, but I think there's a lot of.
Well, it would be exceptionally or extra true for larger cities such as like where you live, for example.
Yeah.
That's where the students are. So
Yeah.
then there's rental prices skyrocket stuff. I'm in a smaller town. It's not really a student issue here.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like the people who are retiring, right? The boomers are all moving into my Niagara Falls area and buying up all the homes for $1 million+ when they're not worth $50. It's like, what the heck is going on? Just because they're 2 minutes from the casino.
And a lot of times too, they'll build these new condos that are 1 bedroom. So they build these new places, very quick, easy to set up, but it's no place to raise a family. So, they end up going through so many different tenants that, it's you're not building a community. You're just building these like one and done kind of. You live there for a little while, and move on kind of thing. And
it's almost like markets don't necessarily provide for the long-term needs of societies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds more like fast buck for inconvenience.
Yeah.
Make it more inconvenient for people, but make it necessary for them to cohabitate in small places because they got nowhere else to go because the rest of the place is gentrified as fuck.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yeah.
You've just made yourself land.
I'm also seeing stories now too of that remind me a lot of like England from 20 years ago, of like landlords are renting out like single bedroom spaces with bathrooms to 20 people.
I saw
Yeah.
a garage, an empty garage listed, no bathroom, no kitchen, listed as a studio apartment in Toronto.
But I do want to just mention something. You did mention something interesting, Justin, of the people who go to study to Canada.
Mhm.
A lot, and I know this because a family member went to University of Canada to finish their post-grade on sociology and political science. I don't remember where they went to study. It was somebody in my family.
Yeah.
But they came back. They're not working here. But that's the thing. What is the ratio? And this is somewhat of a rhetorical question, but what is the ratio of migrants who go to study to the United States or Canada and exit versus those who stay there?
Yeah.
And
Good
you'll
question.
see that
I don't
that
know.
ratio is the people who are exiting once they finish the studying versus the ones who stay. The ones who exit is higher because they want to return home and provide their intelligence to better develop their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Canada is probably a little bit education snobby too, because I know there's another problem where we don't accept diplomas from other countries.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if
Yeah,
you're like a major doctor in India and you move your family to Canada, you can't be a doctor here. You have to go study again.
That's a situation in the United States too.
Yeah,
That's a
and
situation everywhere. I had, for example, my brother, he's a doctor, and he studied here in Costa Rica, then he studied in Colombia, then he studied in the United States, and he studied in Canada also. And when he returned here, neither the Canadian or United States was admitted into his curriculum as a doctor. There are some things that are. I can understand certain regulations for the inscription of doctors.
yeah. I
especially
don't think we
in
should just
schools.
let anybody go in and just be like, "Yo, I'm a
Yeah.
doctor in my country," but they shouldn't have to start from zero. There should be
Yeah.
like a
Exactly. There should be, and
you can pass our exam, you're good.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because it's not like law where, in each country, you can't move from one country to another as a lawyer because the laws are going to be different. The human body is pretty universal, but
yeah. Well, I mean,
Uh,
it's not much different than driving, right? Like, I can go to America and drive, but if I'm going to
Yeah.
stay there for 3 months, I got to get that state's driver's license. I
yeah.
can't just continue on my Ontario driver's license.
Yeah.
Brings me to another question for the Canadians. It says, I have a question for the Canadians. If the country goes conservative in the next election, do you see them collaborating more with Trump administration, or do you foresee them being contention? Trevor, what do you think?
I think they'll kiss the ring immediately. Like, they love Trump. The conservatives right now love MAGA. So yeah, they'll want to. I don't know if how the Americans or how Trump will respond to that, wanting to be in that inner circle, but the Canadian conservatives will want that. Yeah, for sure.
It's possible. I do believe that our next election, that the majority will be won by the conservatives.
Yeah. Same.
Will they have a 51%? I don't think so. If they got that 51%, then yes, it will be 4 years of Canada and US flushing everything they've ever built down the toilet.
Yeah.
But if the other parties in Canada can maintain a 51% over conservatives, then it won't be so bad. It wouldn't be the first time conservatives have been in power. It's just this Pierre guy who's a little bit more conservative than we're used to. So
yeah, and maybe a Russian asset.
Maybe a Russian asset. Yeah,
it's really alarming how many conservatives around the world seem to be connected to Russian intelligence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's actually it's kind of a silly thing that's going on right now. Is Pierre is accusing Trudeau of not sharing intelligence with the Conservative Party, or Pierre specifically. Like, show us who our operatives are, and like what the information and the intel and stuff. And Trudeau's like, yeah, no problem. Just go get certified. You just have to go to this place
Yeah.
Sign your name a couple times so that you can get the classification you need for the clearance, and I'll give you all of the paperwork. And he comes right back with, see, Trudeau doesn't want to tell me or share anything with
Yeah.
me. It's like,
That's
did you
a
just not hear
very-
what he said?
It's a very Trumpian thing.
It's so a Trumpian
Like,
thing.
oh, you have to do a thing. Well, that's unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolute. It's silly. So right now, they're trying to get a vote of no confidence against Trump in our parliament. They're trying to push what they're calling a carbon tax election, which, when you start talking about tax and eliminating a tax, it's a pretty good position to be in. So we're pretty sure that it's going to be a conservative win, but all we don't want them to do is have full control over our house, right? If you took the American house, and if you were to have more parties in there, it would come down to who has more seats in that house, right? So you guys know how the game of majority works.
Functionally, but not like there's a certain amount of formality that the concept of a premiership has that wouldn't necessarily be the case. Like, I think American politics would be fascinating if we started getting some coalition governments. It's not going to happen, but it'd be fascinating.
Yeah.
And to add on to the previous topic there, skeptic spin. Okay, what I heard was a temporary close to prevent LGBTQ rush to the border. No, I mean, Canada wouldn't close its borders for those reasons, at least, anyways, because we're pretty cool with that. We like that over here. The Pride parades in Toronto are awesome.
Yeah. I know I've had a number of my viewers reach out to me about that. Like, what's the situation? How can I get to Canada? I'm really afraid of what's going to happen, like as a trans person or as a gay person or whatever. And I have emailed my MP. I haven't heard anything back, but I know there are also there's the Rainbow Railroad and things like that, of like, there are ways to get to Canada, maybe not in the most legal ways, but that's definitely.
You know what's interesting on this? Well, the point of Justin, I do agree with his initial analysis in the sense that I do think that the Conservative Party may win the Prime Minister position. It would depend on how much of the 338 seats that may grab from the House of Commons in Canada or the Parliament in that sense. We'll see in that way. Hopefully they don't grab a super majority of 228, 230 they need.
Yes.
I don't remember.
Well,
So
anyway,
this is all knowledge that it's new knowledge to me. I've never voted. I've never felt it necessary. For me, it was always like, they're just kind of like cross sections of the same group of people. Then neither one of them really has a terrible idea. It's like, worth a shot. This is the first election and the first time where I'm just like, I don't want Pierre to be involved at all.
Look,
because, like, his
can I tell you
ideas-
something about my experience? I'm going to tell you this way.
Okay.
Hey, my father, I'm adopted individual. I was adopted by a Costa Rican mother and by a Venezuelan father. I was born in Costa Rica to another Costa Rican woman. My heritage is Afro-Indigenous. I have Afro-descendancy, slavery blood in me, as well as indigenous blood, one of the 8 groups here. Because of this, my father worked as a diplomat, and I had the experience of, from the get-go, being involved in the world of politics, of living through elections, of being the little kid with the shirts and the flags, because we had to get somebody elected. So to me, in that sense, I've been in politics all my life, and there are 3 rules I've learned extremely well. Number 1, never, ever, ever fall for the cult of personality. If you are convinced that somebody has a similar agenda of the things that you view that are better for your own country, don't ever go beyond that step of saying, okay, he or she may have great ideas, but it's up to me to continue the pressure to make sure that if that person gets elected, they're going to start fulfilling the promises or the ideas that are put there.
Yeah.
Second thing, the most important thing for somebody that gets involved in politics is understanding that one voice is stronger than 1,000, but 1,000 can silence one voice. But if that one voice learns how to redirect the screamings of thousands, then it becomes a deadly force, that one person. And the third thing you learn in politics, everybody lies, everybody tells the truth, and everybody just dreams.
Yeah, I like that last one. I definitely agree on that last one for sure. Do you have something to add there, Daedalus?
Nope. I think that's a
Okay.
pretty good list.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Liked
thank
it.
you so much. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. You're right. And I'm not discounting my vote this time because I have stronger views. This guy you see now has very stronger views than I had a year ago. So I'm going to get a lot more involved.
Yeah.
And the proof is in this YouTube channel right here.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I love just to jump on the idea of the cult of personality. I think that's hugely important because and not just thinking that, okay, I vote every 4 or 5 years or whatever, and then that's it. That's my contribution, is that calling people out and that organizing against a party that maybe you voted for. Maybe you like most of their things that they do, but you still have to call out the things you don't agree with. And I think that's so important to think about because we don't always think about that part of it.
Yeah, let me share something on the screen. On the private chat, I put something on there. That's from a newspaper here in Costa Rica. This was almost 12 years ago.
You want me to screen share it or you want to screen share it?
If you can screen share it, if possible.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, it's possible. Screen share. Okay.
So this is me. This was 12 years ago. I pretty much I ran to Congress under the idea of legalization of cannabis and drug policy reform. I did not win because I was going with a small party, but the intention was not me for win or not win. The intention was to open the door for me to get into Congress, which was successful. And because I got into Congress and started working my way up through the having the years of Congress people, 3 years ago, we got cannabis legalized here in Costa Rica. So with this example, it's not that I want to brag. It's that I want to show something about important of getting involved in politics. You have to know the game. I've been shot at twice. You have no idea the countless bodies I have seen fall.
Wow.
Metaphorically and literally. I survived so many things in 20 some odd, almost 30 years of my political experience, that I can tell you two things. Never, ever let anyone tell you that it cannot be done. But be careful, because the idea of it cannot be done versus it can be done also applies to those who want to oppress you, those who want to use their religion or they want to use their ideology to oppress you.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say in that sense.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. All right. Well, I mean, how do you say much more on top of that afterwards? Well, I did have one more thing start here, but I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe, I don't know. Trevor, what do you think? I do have a question to Canadians, if they know. I see some connection to Tamil diaspora in Canada and conservatives there. I'm not sure what the question's asking.
I'm not sure, actually. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. We tried. Maybe
Yeah.
if you elaborate, I don't know. Whoops. All right. So, yeah. So, guys, thanks so much for joining me on this talk of Trump and versus the 51st state, apparently. I mean, if we're going to be the 51st state, let us vote next time.
Yeah.
And we'll see who gets elected.
And technically would be the 52nd if Washington, D.C. becomes a state.
Plus Puerto Rico.
Plus Puerto Rico, so 53.
Oh,
Yeah.
the Marshall Islands, you know,
Yeah,
we got a lot of
that's true, yeah.
territories sitting out there that pay
Yeah, that's
taxes
true.
and don't
Yeah.
vote or aren't allowed to vote, rather,
Yeah.
in Congress.
So I'm just going to start working our way out of here. I'm going to start just real quick to let everybody know. I mentioned it in the chat, and I'll say it live. Happy birthday to Maya Atkinson and her show over at Bad Science Sunday. So everyone, make sure you go check out Bad Science Sunday tomorrow night, 9 Eastern, and you wish her a happy birthday and super chat her your best happy birthday wishes. Did so.
Make sure
Go
to
ahead.
involve magnets. It makes Tapioca Weasel nuts.
Yeah. Did so. Are you a content creator? Do you have a location, a place to find some people? Or
No, I'm not creating. I just like to. I don't have
today
much
you
time
did.
to
You
create.
created today.
Yeah. But I do thank you for having me. As we say here, pura vida, eke, beb, shkoboblaba, which in the language of the Bribri means see you later, walk with your eyes open. Eke, beshkoboblaba. And
Thanks so much for joining us. Because as a strange face that came on, my first reaction was like, "Uh-oh," and I'm so glad that you ended up being like awesome. So,
Yeah, that's really cool.
pura vida.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'll come back in and we'll discuss all things.
Subscribe and come back again.
I got it into the Discord, so
awesome.
I'll when I'm when I remember to get in, I'll say hi and what's up. All right.
Awesome.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Panellists Media, two guys talking history. What are you guys talking about coming up?
So we're sitting on a couple things. I saw a horrible Ryan Macbeth video the other day. I'm going to talk about that for a bit.
Who's Ryan Macbeth?
Ryan Macbeth is an American YouTuber who does mixed quality military and intelligence videos, and sometimes history in this case. He did a 5-minute history on Israel and Palestine that made me go, "Oh God, this is horrible." Anyway, we're shopping around for some stuff. I've kind of been on a somewhat of a health hiatus, so we've not been doing nearly as much. But come check us out. Two Guys Talking History. We usually have a good time, and if not, you see a decent argument because there's two of us.
Yeah, well, your channel's in the description, so anybody who wants to go subscribe, you can just scroll down into our description and click on his channel and go subscribe like I did. I did that yesterday. And you'll also see Godless Engineer's link in there, but he couldn't make it, unfortunately, which is unfortunate. But
yeah, if you haven't subscribed already to Skeptic's Command, I did twice tonight because I have 2 YouTube accounts. So there you go.
Yeah, I have the same thing, my like personal gaming account and
Yes.
then like this account, and every time I go I double subscribe. Speaking of subscribers, Trevor, what are we up to? 180,000 subscribers over there?
Yeah, 180,000. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, that I'm gonna rewatch your 10 Commandment one now that I can like totally just slam it all in one.
Somebody suggested maybe I should do a best of, do a compilation of one video with all 10. Maybe that'll happen. I don't know. There will be,
as long as they're in the same playlist for me. That's all.
Yeah.
I need. You got a new series coming up? Or are you going to do like a one-off episode? What are you looking at?
Not a new
You wanna
series.
share
I'll do
anything?
some one-offs for now. I'm working on one about how to make Christmas more Christian.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of creators out there who don't think Christmas, the celebration of the birth of Jesus, is Christian enough. So they give you tips on how to make it more Christian. So I'm going to be
like Elf on a Shelf.
They have Christian versions of Elf on a Shelf. There's one where you follow a star and then you move the little wise man. And then there's another one where you have to put a hay in the manger every day. And then there's another one where it's a shepherd. That's like an Elf on a Shelf, but it's
obviously it's because all of us atheists have joined the war on Christmas on the side of the war.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would love to. I think I put it in a comment in one of your videos, but something that was kind of news to me is this idea of Christian post-secondary schools.
Oh
didn't
yeah.
know that was actually a thing, and I know that you went to one.
Yeah, that's what I have a degree from Bible college. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear all about like answers or not answers in genders, Discovery Institute and those
Yeah.
kind of places. And I'm like, holy crap, how are these places allowed to exist?
Yeah.
I would love to see you just do like an expose on like
Yeah, there's one
what
that
are some of the bigger schools out there and what do they do? And
yeah, and those ones aren't even really schools because they're not accredited even at all. They're just like some guys who like spout their stuff online. And another one I've noticed recently popping up on my Facebook a lot is an organization called Is Genesis History? And every
wow.
time that they pop up, I want to just comment, no. Next question.
Yeah, I have a very short answer for you. No, next question.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, myself, I got a couple of shows coming up. I was supposed to take most of this month off. I wasn't going to do anything, but then Trump went and tweeted something stupid, and I got
Yeah.
triggered. But that doesn't change the fact that I went ahead and booked myself Aaron Ra to come join me
Nice.
here on December 27th. So the final, like normal Skeptic Spin episode where he'll take on Triple Take, our little tableau of YouTube shorts.
Yeah.
I mean, no better way to end the year off than with Aaron Ra. And then, if you didn't know, I'm a game designer, a game design teacher, and a gamer, and I want to play some games with my friends and in the community and the audience. And what better way to do that than to put the entire thing under an umbrella of thank you to Pragmatic Crystal and all the hard work Pragmatic Crystal does in the chat and for so many channels. I saw the list of channels that Pragmatic Crystal has a wrench for. It's impressive. And so, the list of people I want to thank is a long list, but we'll start with one. And the first person we'll center will be Pragmatic Crystal. So we'll do a game night stream where we'll just share our appreciation for Pragmatic Crystal, and that'll be on December 30th. So that one, just come on, hang out, and we're going to play a little game that I have where the panelists will take on a role in the game, but there'll also be a role for the audience as well, where you guys will get to vote on your favorite answers or whatever. I don't want to give away too much, but in any case, yeah, I'm super happy I did this episode. Thank you, Titan Uranus, for helping me put this thing together, and Jer for being in the chat tonight and helping out. I was getting so close to that 500 subscribers, and I was like, I need the view counts, and Titan's like, well, you got to stream, dummy. So I was like, okay, then let's tackle this Trump calling us the 51st state, of which I don't want to be the 51st state. I like my country just where it is. I believe the better analogy is we're the guys living in the attic above the meth lab. And I like that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got any pushback on that one, Daedalus?
Well, I just look, Canada's always been regarded as America's hat.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, we're America's hat. Yeah.
What kind of hat are we?
And Florida's America's wang.
No. Okay, I put up an ad on Fiverr for a guy to saw Florida off. I think he's almost done.
Okay, there you go.
All right. Well, on behalf of myself, Trevor, Daedalus, thanks everyone for coming and watching.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And yeah, we're pushing that 500 subscribers. So let's like and share. And if you guys don't mind, when you go to bed tonight, go onto my channel and just hit play on one of the playlists on repeat or something. I don't know. I just need the hours now.
Yeah.
But we'll see you guys all next time. Don't forget, happy birthday, Maya.
And Taylor Swift.
And Taylor Swift. Is it Taylor Swift?
Yesterday.
Oh, man. Sorry, Taylor. Forgive me.